Welcome to Accounting High.
Where do we start with culture? And is it top down? Is it bottom up? Ideally, if you're starting out a company and you decide what your virtues or values are, those could be consistent throughout the life of the company, but most likely they're going to evolve and you're going to progress and learn as a leader. And you're going to see you've kind of done the cliche thing of putting them up on the wall, but nobody knows what they are and nobody looks at them. If you're looking at redefining what your values are, then look at what is your team already embodying, what's already working, what's resonating with them, what's resonating with customers, and use that as a starting point.
May I have your attention, please?
Welcome to Accounting High. It's freshman year at a brand new school. Here, we have no rules in place as we're on a mission to set our own traditions. So hang tight and learn with us as we grow. At Accounting High, you can expect to gain knowledge in a completely different way than what you may be used to, with some fun and oftentimes colorful conversations involving some of the best teachers in the accounting industry. Whether you loved high school or you hated it, here's your chance to be a part of an unforgettable experience redone. While you're here, don't forget to follow us on Spotify or subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you may be listening to us right now so you don't miss out on any new episodes. And feel free to leave us a 5-star review letting us know how the school year is treating you. In addition, share this episode on social media, tagging us at Accounting High. So sit back, relax, and open your mind because class is in session.
I repeat, may I have your attention, please?
This is another public service announcement brought to you in part
by Accounting High.
The views and events expressed here are
of the next generation of accounting and tech professionals leading this space.
The events and suggestions are not to be taken lightly. Children should not partake in the listening
of this podcast.
Anything else?
Yeah.
So without further ado, introducing the star of our show,
Scotty and Dave Olsen.
We're going to have a problem here.
Welcome back to the Varsity Tips Center. This is part 2 of the People Experience. PX2, Culture, Core Virtues. Core Virtues, as Dave likes to say. I like that way of saying it. If you tuned into part 1, that was a great intro. That was a great intro to this course. This part 2, we're going to go deeper. Episode 2 of 5. We're going to talk about the PX element of culture. And our special co-host here, Dave Olsen. What did we say your class was at Accounting High, or your subject matter?
I don't know if we ever really figured it out, because really, to me, it's about leadership, and high school is very much lacking, at least in my experience of teaching leadership. So I don't know that there's a great parallel in high school.
All right. Well, this is going to be the leadership class in this high school at Accounting High. We'll eventually figure out what your real course is or your analogous course is, but this is our leadership courses, which is the most important courses for any budding leaders. For people that don't want to be leaders, they don't take your course, right?
Yeah, this isn't for you.
All right, cool. So tell me what we're going to talk about today. I said culture.
Yeah, so we framed it up last time, and really this whole series is about creating the life and the business that you want. And for those of you who want to be more than just you in your business, you'll need to create a people experience that actually attracts people and has them perform well while they're there and will actually want to stay with you. So this episode's about culture, and it's about designing the kind of company that you want to have and that is intentional and that people will resonate with and they'll want to embrace and stay with. So what is that? Excuse me. What is that intentional culture? And we talked about the Nimble people experience that we have, and we have several elements to that. And really what this element or this culture relates to is understand each of our employees and team members understand, subscribe to, and see how they contribute to the Nimble vision. And for them to be able to understand it, to see it, to subscribe to it, there has to be something out there. It has to be communicated. So that's what this episode's going to be all about.
So they're always is something out there. Everybody has a culture, whether they pay attention to it or not. You've been very intentional about your culture at your firm. I have too. Ever since we started doing EOS, we paid a lot of attention to what kind of culture we have, what our core values are. I think a lot of firms that ignore that or claim they have one, they should reevaluate it always. This is the kind of thing that's always, at the core, we'll talk about what these core virtues are, what these core values are. But at the core, everybody's culture kind of starts from the top and goes down. I like to think that at our firm, we have sort of a top-down and bottom-up approach, and it feeds into both sides of it. How do you say your culture is led with? And what do you guys lead with your culture?
I would say in a lot of companies, and ours, it's both, because I don't see it as something that we decided on a few years ago and it's always the same. It's always stagnant. I think it evolves. I think it can be most effective when the founder from the beginning is intentional about what they want the culture to be, what embodies who they are and the way they want to work, and then they attract a team that resonates with that culture. And when we create a culture, we're not saying that everybody in the world should resonate with that culture. But when we're intentional, we attract the kind of people that resonates with that. And it's not about attracting all the same kind of people. We want to have diversity. We want to have all kinds of different lines of thought, but there are certain cultural elements that we want people to be united in. And that's what we're talking about here. So when you're talking about your question of where does that start, I think ideally it starts with the founder. And I think it also, the founder can pay attention to what's working and what's not, and what resonates with the team, and adapt that intentionally, not just let it kind of get out of control, but be intentional about what's working in the business. And there may be those listening who are years into it and realize that there's no intention in the culture, or the culture's kind of got out of hand, and I don't think it's too late. And so I think that's where both a top-down and a bottom-up approach can work. Like, what does the leader want, and what's already there? Like, what kind of culture's already been built, and let's pick out the pieces of it that are effective, and again, be intentional. Don't just let it kind of wander all over, but be intentional about where that's going, and start now. Define that now, and get the team on the same page. Any new hires can be aligned with that culture. There may be people on the team already who don't align with that culture, and that can be discovered quickly. So it's never too late. Any stage in a company's business, you can get intentional about culture. Yeah.
And we're going to talk about intentional and accidental cultures too today, and communication. But we're going to start with the mission, vision, and values. And again, before we get into that, I just recorded an episode with Joe Woodard, and he talked about your, what did he say? He called it vision, mission, and purpose. And he talked about the difference between those. He outlined a lot of highlights from his Disney University course, which I thought was awesome. I've been looking at that, the Disney Institute at Disney University. And there are clear differences between those. You say mission, vision, and values, but you also talk about purpose too. But let's get a clear definition of what those are. Are they all the same thing when you list them out, mission, vision, and values?
No, I see them as different, and the words people use and how they define them could differ, but I think the principles are the same. I think you said what Joe had mission and purpose separate. I probably see those as similar, open to the differences there, but I see mission and purpose in what we're talking about today as very similar, or the same thing. So
what he said was they all serve each other. The vision is like the magnetic north. That's the direction everybody's going. The mission is something that's achievable, it's repeatable, that you work toward. And the purpose is what's sort of driving everybody, everything that they do. See, and this is where I think the vision and the purpose are similar, but the purpose is anything that could happen in day to day. You're doing on purpose. You're being intentional with your actions toward team and toward customers. Anybody you interact with, you're doing it on purpose. So you're being intentional. So I think the purpose is your intention, and the vision is that North Star. So
yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that's consistent with how I see it. How I might put my own words to it is that the purpose is the purpose for which the business exists. Why do you out there? Why should people care? What kind of impact are you going to have? And, for an accounting business, that could be whatever you call it. It could be very specific to working the books and putting out the numbers, or it could be like how we define it as Nimble is really we're enabling the impact of the leaders that we serve. And so it's kind of like creating a second order or a cascading impact on the world because we are handling the back office, the details, the stuff that the most entrepreneurs and visionaries don't want to handle. We are enabling their impact. And so it's kind of something that's much greater than ourselves that we can accomplish on our own. It's enabling other leaders to make an impact. So that's the purpose for which we exist. And then the vision, I think, is something more specific in what we see as ourselves accomplishing. And that can be broken down in different ways. It could be a multi-year vision of where we see ourselves in the future. It could be a 2 or 3 year vision. It could be where do we see ourselves in the next year? But it's about seeing out to the future. And one reason for that, is, especially in the context we're talking about people experience here, it's so we can get people on board with that vision. And when the leader has a clear vision, then the people can decide individually, does this vision align for me? Is this something that I want to be a part of? And if not, that's great. They can go find a leader in a business with a vision that aligns for them. But without clarity and vision, like there's no alignment within the team, and there's no unity in pushing towards that same vision. And there can be a lot of elements to that. It could be, getting to a certain revenue number. Not all employees are, inspired by a certain amount of revenue, but it could be what that means for them. We'll grow a certain amount so that I can have opportunities to move up in my career and take on more responsibility and gain more experiences. So all that kind of plays into being clear about the vision of where the business is going.
Yeah. One story I always like, or example, is the people in the field that are just chopping down. They don't know what direction they're going. They're chopping they're in a big field where you can't see where you're going. You're just hacking at I don't know what they are. I guess the big, let's say it's a cornfield, and you're hacking the corn down because you're trying to get out of it. You need somebody that's up on the perch, that's giving everybody the direction, that sees which direction they need to go and points. Otherwise, you're just going to be hacking in circles. So I don't know. I didn't tell the story very well, but that was the one I always hear that in EOS, and our implementer would tell us that, like, you need somebody that's perched up, that sees along the distance, and that can point everybody in the right direction.
Yeah, for sure. And businesses can kind of stumble along in that way with no vision. And, if people are just hacking away and they're getting paid for it, maybe that's, good enough for them just to show up and collect a paycheck. But to really create the people experience we're talking about, it's got to be much more than that. There's got to be much more inspiration and fulfillment and, drive beyond just kind of showing up and hacking away.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of people could be hacking away and they think that they're moving forward, but they're really just circling in one place. It's that hamster wheel effect. I did that for many years. Many years we just hacked away at everything, and I just kept trying to put out fires, kept reacting to everything, and I was never really creating a future for everybody. It was just reacting.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So let's get into these virtues. So values is what a lot of people hear. Core values is what you would say in EOS, and everybody kind of talks about their core values. Give me the difference in virtues versus values.
Yeah, I think in the way that people see it in business, it's really synonymous. They're exactly the same thing. The reason we use the term virtues is actually inspired by Ben Horowitz, and maybe people may know him as one of the partners with Mark Andreessen and Andreessen Horowitz. And he wrote a book called What You Do Is Who You Are, and it's all about culture. So it's one I highly recommend. But one thing that really stood out to me in that is in the companies that he's run, he calls them core virtues rather than core values. And there's no criticism at all if you call it values. That's great. That's what's more common. But the reason we use values is his argument is that values talk more about an idea. Like, this is what we value. But virtue is more embodying who we are and applying it in the business. It becomes the virtue of the business and virtues of each individual that strive to embody those. So again, no criticism, not saying that values doesn't work and everybody should use virtues, but I just like that distinction in communicating that to the team.
Well, it also serves the purpose of, like, it's unique to what you're doing too, and people can get behind that. If you customize a lot of the stuff, and I like the virtues because that's everybody wants to strive to have to be virtuous, and I always looked at them as stuff that we already embodied when we created our core values. We went through and looked at the traits that we could duplicate of anybody that was already on the team, from the leadership down to every employee. What were the things that if we could have 10 of the people, that we could have 10 of them, what was unique to them? What were they doing and what did they embody that we don't have to teach? It's just part of them too. So.
Yeah, I love that you brought up that part of it, because we talked a few minutes ago about where do we start with culture, and is it top down, is it bottom up? And I see, core virtues following that same thing. Ideally, if you're starting out a company and you decide what your virtues or values are, and then those could be consistent throughout the life of the company, but most likely they're going to evolve, and you're going to progress and learn as a leader, and you're going to see, like you said, what are people already embodying, what works for them. And that's particularly true if you're kind of in the middle of the journey and realize that you haven't defined values or virtues, or you've kind of done the cliche thing of putting them up on the wall, but nobody knows what they are and nobody looks at them. If you're looking at redefining what your values are, then I think that what you said is a great thing, is to look at what is your team already embodying, what's already working, what's resonating with them, what's resonating with customers, and use that as a starting point.
And what I find is so cool is I look at other people's core values, and a lot of ours are similar to the firms that I like how they're run, or I like what they do. And it's the case with yours too. I think 3 of these are identical to mine, said in a little different ways. We only have 4, I think. Yeah. You've got 6 here that we're going to go over. So let's do that. And I'll point out the ones that are similar to ours.
Sure. So first one is operate in integrity. And we have a very clear definition of integrity at Nimble. And some people think of integrity as honesty or morality or ethics or those kind of things. And while all those things are important, I see those kind of as table stakes. Like, that's just how we have to be. But the way we define integrity is we are our word, that we keep our word, we honor our word, we honor agreements. And that's just who we are. We just don't operate without either doing what we say we're going to do, that's what we mean by keep. If we keep our agreements, then we do what we say we're going to do on time as we agreed. If something comes up, if we're moving fast and we're working hard and growing, then things are going to come up, and you're going to not always be able to keep your word, but you can still be in integrity if you honor your word. And what that means is, as soon as you know you can't keep it, you deal with it. Like, you recreate it, you let the person know it's affected, you clean up any mess that's caused by it. But there's no just kind of leaving it, let the deadline pass and dealing with it after. It's a very proactive virtue.
Yeah. Well, it's proactive, but it's also something that's hard to recognize too. Sometimes it's hard because it's the quote that I use with ours. First one of ours is integrity too. And it's integrity is doing the right thing even when no one is watching. So sometimes, when we try to, we try to keep our core values alive and always give people shout outs. We used to do this every week where everybody in the team had to give a shout out to somebody else that represented one of these core values, and integrity was the least amount used of all of ours because it's hard to see. We know the people that have integrity, but to point out specific examples is sometimes hard. But it's one of those core things that without it, you definitely can point that out. You can definitely see people that operate without integrity. So having it is super important.
Yeah, to me, that's really where performance shows up. That's really the foundation. And there's a reason this virtue comes first. Because if everyone is doing what they say they're going to do, and you know that you can count on everybody else to do what they say they're going to do, there's no sitting around wondering what's going to get done. There's very little follow-up. Like, how's this thing coming along? Because you just know that you would know if there's a problem, you would have already heard about it. And so there's no waste of time in that way. It's just everybody moving forward. So again, not to say we're perfect in that, but that's what we put out there, is what we desire to embody.
Yep. Yeah. The highest standards of moral values in business. transparent, honest, and ethical. That's one of the ways we define it too. So, yeah, let's move on to the next one.
Yeah, second one is relate with power.
Ooh,
so
I like that.
And the tagline to that, or the subtext, is we create fulfilling, authentic, and workable relationships. So especially, I mean, in any business, anytime people are involved, it's all about relationships. And especially we're talking about accounting and client service type focused business, our relationships with our clients is everything we have. And so to us, what power means is really understanding where another person is coming from. Like, we all have different contexts in our lives, and we all have different experiences. We see things differently. We could look at the same thing and see it differently. And we intend to recognize that and do our best to understand what other people are saying. Don't just assume that we see it the same way, but really ask questions, really be with someone in a way that we understand. And we believe that's what creates fulfilling authentic and workable relationships. Workable is something we added a little later after we had defined the rest of our virtues. And workability is a trait that we look for in any new hire and that we recognize and foster within the team. And what that means is, like, we're workable, we're flexible. If things don't turn out or aren't turning out as we expected, we can adapt. We're not rigid in how we expect things to happen. And that's especially important in relationships. People are complicated, people are messy, and if we're all workable, then everything goes a lot smoother.
I love that. It's kind of similar to one of ours. Ours is just community. All of ours is just one word too, but I like yours. I like the way you put it. Ours, community. Surround yourself with people that are going to lift you higher. We do not thrive at the expense of others, and we succeed by helping each other. We form a stable, more inspired foundation for everybody. So, similar in ways.
Yeah, that community is all about relationships. So.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So the next one is accountable. We hold ourselves and others accountable to performance. And the surface, this is pretty straightforward, and there's also a lot of depth to it. But really, it's being willing to own up to and report on performance. If performance goes well, then we can report on it went well. If it's not, then we own up to it and we make adjustments that we need to handle that. But we take accountability for our own work and our own part in what's working and what's not. Part of that, what that looks like, is we're accountable. Each of us are accountable for the business as a whole. And so if any team member sees something that can be upgraded in the business, they're accountable to point that out. And they may not be the ones to fix it, but they also shouldn't ignore it. They should make sure those involved are aware of it and just be accountable to our performance as a whole, as a business.
So our third one is also accountability. That's pretty much 3 for 3 if we use the stretch for community.
What are the odds of that?
I didn't even know you when we made these. This was years ago, and what are the odds is right. But ours, personal accountability requires mindfulness, acceptance, honesty, and courage to work diligently and honor our commitments, clearly define our expectations of our team, our client relationships, and the outcomes for the individuals and the business as a whole. You can't teach accountability to. It's been something that, again, it's really hard to drive to people to be accountable. They just typically are in a lot of ways, and we could identify the people that were very accountable, that would hold themselves accountable, and the ones that didn't, they're not even with us anymore. So yeah, it's a really important one.
Yeah, I like that. That is one of the leading indicators when we see, say, newer people on the team and not taking accountability. That's kind of an easy thing to point to and to work on. Easy. And if it's not improving and not changing, then a pretty easy path from there. So.
For sure. All right. Well, let's go on to your next one.
All right. Create the future. We are forward thinking. We create a system at the forefront of innovation and technology. And so, yeah, this is just, I think, pretty self-explanatory, but we're always looking to the future. We're always looking to create more, to grow, and not just grow in terms of revenue, but just grow personally. And this applies in, I didn't mention this earlier, but these all apply to just as well to personal life as they do to business. But we're all about, we use the word a lot, the word progression a lot in our business. It's all about progressing, getting better, looking ahead, seeing what's coming up. And this is, especially relevant today for the last few months as we've seen some pretty big shifts in technology. And this virtue makes sure that we keep that in the forefront of our minds and always be on the edge of that. It doesn't mean we chase every new shiny object, but we're at least aware of what they are and can evaluate if they're helpful for the business or not.
Dope. Yeah. Well, ours veers off at that point. Our last one is positivity. I think that's, you could see that in a lot of different ways. The quote I have here is, keep your face in the sunshine and you cannot see a shadow. This is just something inherently I've always been, sometimes to a fault, putting less focus on the feeling good now and making the choice every day to be optimistic, show appreciation for ourselves, for our clients, for our team, keeping positivity central in all aspects of our life. So again, this is one of those life things too, beyond just, the firm, and, bringing this to everyday life too.
Yeah. Like that. I love that.
Let's go on to the next one.
All right. Fifth one is committed. And that's simple definition. We do what is necessary. So if we've committed to something, then we just do what it takes to do that. With that, what's implied in that, and there's, training and discussion that goes behind all these virtues to support them and to help our team understand what it means and apply them. But what's implied in that is we can't be loose with our commitments. We can't say we're committed to 100 different things because we can't do what it takes to accomplish 100 different things. We need to be very selective in what we're truly committed to. What it doesn't also say is that we sacrifice other important areas to our lives. It means to do what it takes. It means we're clear on what commitments we've made and that we balance those. So if we're committed to our families and we're also committed to our work, then we do what it takes to fulfill them both. And, at times our family may need more attention and that's what it takes. At times the work may need more attention, but it's just being clear about what we're committed to.
Cool. Yeah, I like that.
And then last one is lead with impact. And so this is intentional. This is last two. Not that it's least important, but it kind of underlying foundation for all of them is we see ourselves as leaders who matter, and we see ourselves as people who can make a difference in the team, with our clients, and it should embody everything that we do. So.
Yeah, you shouldn't go through your actions blindly. Know that you're going to have an impact on others. Again, like if you lead with impact, I think people are going to be more intentional. A lot of this surrounds having the right intention around your actions. I love that one. I've been trying to do that in everything I do now. Lead with impact.
Yeah, a lot of these virtues have been shaped by, and I can't remember if I mentioned this in the first episode, but I have an executive coach, and his name's Brandon Craig, and his company is Onticor. And a lot of these virtues and what we do in the business are shaped by his leadership methodology that he developed. But one of those principles it's kind of unique that I haven't really heard in that way before is the last two words of that is who matter. We see ourselves as leaders who matter. And what that means to me is that we matter whether we like it or not. Like, we're going to have an impact, and that impact could not be what we want. So everything we do or don't do makes a difference. And if we're aware of that and intentional, then we can make the difference that we want to make, and not an accidental impact.
Yeah, some people think nobody's paying attention and nobody's, think they don't matter, but everybody matters, and there's always somebody paying attention to what you're doing. So
yeah,
cool.
Yeah, so those are our 6 core virtues.
I love it. So let's talk about intention versus accidental cultures.
Yeah, you touched on this before, but really the culture is going to happen whether we like it or not. And so we might as well be intentional about it. And this is one of the best descriptions I've seen of this is in Clay Christiansen's book, How Will You Measure Your Life? And he talks about culture in all areas of life, not just our businesses, but also creating cultures within our families or any organization, that it's going to happen. And so if we can be aware of that and then be intentional about creating creating that culture. And often the culture is going to mirror the founder. And if the founder's not intentional, it could mirror some of the less desirable traits of that founder. But by being intentional, we can pick the traits that we are strong in or that we want to develop, and be intentional about shoring that up throughout the company. And we all have many, many weaknesses and shortcomings, and we can be intentional about supplementing those rather than making those also weaknesses of the business.
So, yeah, they do mirror the founder, and whether you like it or not, your culture's always there. So be intentional about it. I like that, Clay Christensen, because it's another C. We got a lot of C's in here. And then the next C we're going to talk about is communication.
Yeah, so really when we look at the CEO role, you can also look at it as a chief communication officer. And something I've heard in various ways of saying it, but essentially the message is, if you're sick of hearing yourself say it when you're communicating with your team, and whether that be communicating the vision or reinforcing the core virtues or expounding the vision, if you're sick of hearing yourself say it, you probably still haven't said it enough. Because we kind of get sick of, we do a lot of thinking ourselves, and we have this in our minds and it's clear to us, and we maybe get sick of thinking about it or talking about it, but our teams aren't in the same place. They haven't heard it. They don't see it as clearly in their minds as we see it in ours. And so it's important to have consistent, ongoing communication, and probably way more than you think you need to.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I haven't heard that before, but I like that. We used to say, if you've taught something to somebody less than 7 times, they're not going to know it. They only really internalize it after the 7th time. And even then, you still need to continue to reinforce it. So,
yeah, I've heard that 7 number too, and maybe that's a human trait. I hear that in sales and marketing too. Like, it typically takes 7 positive contacts before someone's going to even think about engaging with you on average. So maybe it's just a human trait. It takes time for things to sink in.
Maybe 7 isn't so lucky. Maybe it's science.
Yeah.
So another C, connecting. So how do we connect the team to all of the mission, vision, values? Yeah.
So what does communication look like? And it could be anything. Any way you're communicating your team is great. And I think founders and CEOs have to look at their own personalities and their strengths and what works in their business based on their structure and their size, remote versus in person, worldwide versus, or multiple time zones versus one. So there's lots of things that could work, but I'll give you just a few examples of how we do it at Nimble. One is that every month, and this is our current practice, is every month I record a video, and probably 5-10 minutes typically, and just give an update on the last month, how the business is doing, introduce and welcome new team members, any news, any highlights. Usually I'll pick a core virtue and talk about that, maybe how we've seen it demonstrated as an example in the last month. So really just a way to have the whole team on the same page, just in a short video format, and have them have a connection to what's going on in the business, and a connection to me, since I'm not talking to every team member every day. The second one is an all hands meeting. So we currently do these quarterly, and it's basically getting everybody synchronously. We're a remote team across the world, all 4 US time zones and the Philippines. And so we get everybody together and report on how our last quarter went, where the direction we're going next quarter, and also reinforce the overall vision for the outcomes for the year, and just where we're going as a business.
What kind of turnout do you get on those meetings? Does everybody show up?
Yeah, I mean, I would say unless somebody's on vacation or whatever, it's 90%. I don't know what the attendance is, but
what time do you have? What time do you hold it, considering all the time zones?
So we've experimented with somewhere between 2 and 4 p.m. Mountain Time. There's no perfect time, especially with the Philippines. But if we do it at say 4 or 5 p.m. Mountain Time, it's a little bit late for our East Coast team members, but it catches the beginning of the shift for our Philippines team members. So mid to late afternoon is typically when we do it. And
I don't mean to interrupt on this whole flow here, but with your outsourced team, I've heard of outsourced teams in Philippines working U.S. hours and working their hours with not as much overlap. How do you guys handle this?
Yeah, we've evolved. We used to have most of our team on their night shift, so matching our day shift, and that was taking a big toll on morale and health and productivity. So currently we have 3 shifts. We have a early morning shift. I think they start at about 5 a.m. their time, which overlaps with the end of our day. And then we have for those where it's not important to overlap, we have a Philippines day shift. And then we have a Philippines evening shift where it's trying to blank on the exact time, but I believe they start at 4 or 5 p.m.
Okay.
And work through their evening.
I think we talked about this last time. Yeah. I've always, wondered how people handle that, because in most cases our work's asynchronous, so we don't really care what times they work, but there's always some overlap, maybe 1 or 2 hours for meetings and stuff.
Yeah, for us, and this is related to the communication here we're talking about, is asynchronous is great for day-to-day work, but it lacks that connection. And we want all of our team to feel part of the team and not just doing things in the background. So we have regular one-on-ones and coaching sessions between and we'll talk more about coaching in a different episode, but our US team will have coaching one-on-one sessions with our Philippines team, just in the same structure that our US team operates.
Dope. Yeah. You got another one here.
Yeah, another team-wide meeting is our lunch and learn. So we'll have all hands meetings every quarter, and then we'll have a lunch and learn every month. And that can be on a variety of topics. Typically, as our team has grown and we have more non-accounting people on our team, this is less of a technical learning and more of a company-wide learning. So it could be talking about elements of the people experience or training on core virtues. Or I think our last one was we had our performance review process. So we had a lunch and learn on previewing that process and making sure everybody's on the same page on how that was going to work. So learning is secondary. First is lunch, getting together and just being together as a team, having that live connection point.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and then a couple more. One is final hiring interviews is a good chance for a CEO or executive to communicate the vision with the hire and make sure that they see a likely cultural fit in the new hires. We have what we call, and this is a preview for our team, anyone who's listening before we actually implement this. This is an idea that our people team leader came up with and I'm excited about, is we're taking people who are hired within a certain range of time and we'll call them a cohort, and then they'll meet together and kind of maintain a connection. And the focus of that would be core virtues, and based on where they're at in their journey with Nimble, whether they're new or whether they've been here a few years, they can talk about how the core virtues have evolved and impacted them throughout their journey at Nimble. So
I love that. So it's sort of like creates accountability buddies too, in a way. And people, I've heard of teams doing this, and it's very effective, especially for remote teams. You have people that'll create friends from the beginning, and they can, use each other as resources and also be accountable to each other too.
Yeah, we've seen value in this. And the last one is just ad hoc team member meetups as well. As our team's grown, we have several different teams, including several different client service teams. So not everybody interacts with everybody day to day. So we want to be intentional about creating connections across the business.
Yeah, I like that too, because again, it's creating connections and being intentional about that. All of this is very intentional and it's very on purpose. So even though you don't highlight mission, vision, purpose, I like mission, vision, purpose because it's MVP. And this being Varsity Tips, I think coaches are leaders. So you might just be another coach at Accounting High. Maybe it's the leadership coach. I know you talk a lot about your coaches that you've had along the way. Maybe that's what you are in this role at Accounting High. I think all high schools need coaches too. So
I like that.
That might be it. Metaphorically, we might not be necessarily talking about PE, but you're still very physically active. You go mountain biking and do a lot of active things, keep fit, but the coaching is more of the philosophical coaching and coaching, businesses, business owners, and leadership. So I think that's what this is. I think that we figured it out. You're just another coach, Coach Olsen.
Good call. I like it.
Dope. And that does lead us into a preview for next session. Part 3 in this PX is coaching. with Coach Olsen. So it's going to be dope. Anything you want to drop as a preview for the next episode for our listeners, for our students?
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about, so I'm excited about it. But I'd say this is going to be all about designing. And we just talked a lot about being intentional about designing things, designing the culture. And this will be more about designing the organization and then using ongoing coaching to create performance in the team. So
this is awesome. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to that one. I think that's going to be great. Dope. Well, this has been another episode of the PX at Varsity Tips at Accounting High. Culture and your core virtues and everything surrounding that. It's been very intentional. None of this was accidental. Having you on again is not accidental. So we'll see you again, Coach Olsen.
We'll see you soon.